Chevy's engine was making that sound again. The one I'd been ignoring for 3 weeks because the dealership in Bend wanted $800 I didn't have. Tick, tick, tick under the hood, like a nail caught in the timing belt. Probably wasn't the timing belt. Timing belt doesn't sound like that. Could be a heat shield loose on the manifold, or the engine mounts finally giving up after 200,000 miles. I kept the window down anyway. Mid-September in the Cascades, you get maybe 2 more weeks of this weather before everything goes to shit. 58 degrees, pine smell coming off the national forest, morning light hitting the obsidian deposits along Highway 97 like someone scattered broken glass across the road cut. Been driving this route for 16 years, ever since I started at Plateau Geotechnical, and I still notice the rock formations. Can't help it. You spend enough time doing soil borings and seismic surveys, you start seeing the bones under everything. My phone buzzed in the cup holder. Probably Diane asking if I remembered to pick up dog food. I didn't. The Costco in Redmond was 40 minutes the wrong direction, and I had a 7 a.m. meeting with Trevor about the Highway 20 expansion project. ODOT wanted foundation analysis on 12 bridge sites before the winter freeze, and we were already 3 weeks behind because the ground-penetrating radar we rented kept giving nonsense readings near Subtle Lake. The phone buzzed again, then again. I glanced down. Not Diane. Trevor, turn on the radio right now. Trevor, any station. Trevor, call me as soon as you get this. I punched the FM button. The truck had the original stereo from 2007, AM/FM, CD player that ate every disc I fed it, auxiliary jack that only worked if you held the cable at exactly the right angle. Picked up maybe 6 stations out here. 3 country, 2 talk radio, 1 NPR that faded in and out depending on which side of the mountain you were on. Static on 94.9. Static on 102.3. I hit seek and let it scan. Confirmed impact approximately 40 minutes ago in the Deschutes National Forest, northeast of the Three Sisters Wilderness area. The Cascades Volcano Observatory reports seismic activity consistent with a high-velocity impact event, registering 4.2 on the Richter scale. We're getting reports of... The signal cut out. I tapped the radio. Static. I hit seek again. Evacuation orders for all areas within a 50-mile radius of the impact site. Emergency services are reporting damage to infrastructure in Sisters, Bend, and Redmond. Highway 20 is closed indefinitely. Residents are advised to... Static again. My hands were tight on the wheel. Impact event. 40 minutes ago. I'd been loading soil samples into the truck 40 minutes ago. Hadn't heard anything. Hadn't felt anything. Then again, I had the compressor running. Gas-powered Ingersoll Rand. Loud as hell. Could have missed a bomb going off. My phone rang. Trevor, you here? He said. No hello. Trevor never did hellos when something was wrong. Just now. Radio's cutting in and out. Meteor. Northeast of the Three Sisters. They're saying Jesus, Rick, they're saying it carved a canyon. Not a crater. A canyon. 12 miles long. I pulled onto the shoulder. The truck's emergency brake had been broken since 2019, so I left it in gear, engine running. 12 miles. That's what Caltech's saying. I've got the USGS earthquake feed up. Looks like a linear impact trajectory, not a vertical drop. Came in at maybe 30 degrees, plowed through the forest like someone dragging a goddamn plow through dirt. 12 miles. I'd done site surveys in that area. BLM land, mostly. Old-growth forest, volcanic soil, basalt formations from the Mazama eruption 10,000 years ago. Good stable ground. You could put a skyscraper on that geology and it wouldn't settle an inch in a century. Where are you? Trevor asked. 97. Just past the turnoff for Sun River. Stay there. Don't go north. They're saying the impact zone is unstable. Unstable how? I don't know. The alerts just keep saying unstable. No ground entry permitted. militaries setting up a perimeter. I watched a Toyota Tacoma blow past me going 75, headed south. Then a Honda CR-V. Then a lifted F-250 with California plates. Everyone driving like they had somewhere to be. "Rick, I need you to hold on." Muffled voices on his end. Trevor talking to someone in the office. Then back to me. Okay, listen. ODOT's calling in all contractors with geotechnical experience. They want people who know the area, who've done surveys in the National Forest. They're not saying what they want us for exactly, but they're offering double rate. For what? They just said no ground entry. I don't know, but they specifically asked for you. By name. Said you did the soil analysis for the Santiam Pass realignment project in 2019, and you know the terrain better than anyone. The Tacoma came back, headed north now. Same truck. I recognized the dent in the tailgate. Driver must have hit the roadblock and turned around. Who asked for me? Someone named Fentiman, Deputy Director of ODOT Emergency Operations. She said she worked with you on the Santiam project. Cassidy Fentiman. Yeah. I remembered her. Young, maybe 35, civil engineer out of Oregon State. Sharp. Had opinions about everything, which made her either great to work with or a pain in the ass depending on the day. Last I heard, she'd moved to Salem, taken some administrative position. Emergency operations. Made sense. She was the type who'd volunteer for disaster response. They want me to do what, exactly? Drive to the command center in Sisters. Bring your field gear. She said. He paused. She said they need someone who can read terrain under non-standard conditions. The hell does that mean? I asked. She wouldn't clarify. Just said you'd understand when you got there. I watched the F-250 come back south. Same truck. Definitely hit the roadblock. How much is double rate? $200 an hour, plus hazard pay. I did the math. 16-hour day at $200 an hour was $3,200. That was a month's mortgage. That was the timing belt and the dog food and Diane student loans from when she went back to school for her teaching license. Rick, Trevor said. You still there? Yeah. You don't have to do this. I can call Fentiman back. Tell her you're unavailable. The Tacoma passed again. Headed north. Third time. Either the driver was lost or they kept trying different routes, hoping one would be open. How bad is it? I asked. I don't know, but Caltech's got a team flying in from Pasadena, USGS is sending their volcano hazards unit, and FEMA just activated Region 10 response. So, probably bad. My daughter was in Portland, lived in an apartment near Powell's Books, worked at some startup that did something with apps. I didn't understand what she did exactly, but she made good money. Portland was 200 miles north. Safe. Probably didn't even feel the impact. Diane was home in Bend, 30 miles from the impact site, if Trevor's numbers were right. Bend was a city, 60,000 people. Fire department, police, hospital, infrastructure. They'd be fine. Tell Fentiman I'll be there in 45 minutes, I said. You sure? I wasn't, but I knew the terrain. I knew the geology. And if ODOT was calling in contractors by name, that meant their own people were either tied up or something else. Something that made them need outside help. Yeah, I said. I'm sure. I pulled back onto the highway. The engine made that tick-tick-tick sound. The radio gave me static on every station. And somewhere ahead, north past Sisters, past the point where Highway 20 cut through the Cascades, there was a canyon that hadn't existed an hour ago. Non-standard conditions, right? I'd done site work in earthquake zones, landslide areas, floodplains after the water receded. I'd seen what the ground looked like when it decided to stop cooperating with engineering assumptions. Soil liquefaction, slope failure, subsidence that dropped a building's foundation 6 inches overnight. But I'd never seen terrain described as unstable by people who wouldn't clarify what that meant. The Chevy's engine ticked. I turned the radio off, and I drove north toward the impact site because that's what you do when someone offers you double rate to read terrain under conditions they won't explain. Because you need the money. Because they asked for you by name. Because you know the area better than anyone. And because, if you're being honest, you want to see what 12 miles of canyon looks like when it gets carved in under a minute. The command center was a parking lot full of trucks that cost more than my house. Sister's high school. They'd set up in the football field, portable trailers, communication equipment, National Guard vehicles with the big antenna arrays. I counted 12 agencies before I stopped counting. USGS, Forest Service, FEMA, ODIT. Caltech had a trailer with satellite equipment on the roof. Even saw a CDC van, which made no sense for a meteor strike unless they were worried about exotic minerals or... No, don't think about that. I parked the Chevy between a Forest Service F-350 and someone's personal Toyota 4Runner with mud tires and a roof rack. My truck looked like someone's grandfather's work vehicle, which it was. I'd bought it from my grandfather's estate in 2007. Security checkpoint at the field entrance. National Guard. Kid maybe 22 years old. M4 rifle slung across his chest like he was guarding a FOB in Afghanistan instead of a high school in Sisters, Oregon. Name? He said. Rick Dalton. ODOT sent for me. Geotechnical contractor. He checked a clipboard. Actual paper clipboard. The digital age hadn't reached emergency response yet. ID. I showed him my driver's license and my Plateau Geotechnical Contractor badge. He studied both like he was checking for forgery, then waved me through. Trailer C. Blue one on the north end. I walked across the football field. The grass was still wet from morning dew, soaked through my Red Wings in about 10 steps. Should have worn the Timberlands. But the Red Wings had steel toes, and something about the M4 rifle made me think steel toes were the right call. Trailer C had a handwritten sign taped to the door. Site assessment team. Authorized personnel only. I knocked. It's open, a woman's voice said. I stepped inside. The trailer was packed. 8 people around a folding table covered in topographic maps, satellite photos, and about 6 different laptops. I recognized Cassidy Fentiman immediately. Short, maybe 5'4", dark hair in a ponytail, wearing an ODOT safety vest over a flannel shirt. She looked like she'd been awake for 30 hours. Rick, she said, thank God. You know the Three Sisters area? I've done site surveys from here to Mackenzie Pass. Why? She gestured to the table. Because the terrain is changing. I stepped closer. The topographic map showed the Deschutes National Forest, the Three Sisters Wilderness, the Cascade Lakes Highway. Someone had drawn a thick red line through the middle, 12 miles long, running roughly northeast to southwest, starting somewhere near the base of North Sister and cutting down through the forest toward Wickiup Reservoir. That's the impact trajectory, Fentiman said. Came in at approximately 32 degrees from horizontal. Initial seismic readings put the meteor mass at around 50 tons. Impact velocity estimated at 30,000 miles per hour. I looked at the map. 50 tons at 30,000 miles per hour. I did the rough math, that was kinetic energy in the petajoule range. More energy than a tactical nuke. More energy than Mount St. Helens. How deep is the canyon? I asked. Varies. 100 feet at the shallow end. 400 at the deepest point. It's not a clean cut. Looks like the meteor tumbled, bounced, tore through the ground at irregular depths. A man across the table cleared his throat. Older guy, maybe 65, gray beard, Caltech polo shirt. We're also seeing unusual seismic signatures from the impact site. Not aftershocks, something else. Rhythmic pulses. approximately every 17 seconds. I looked at him. Pulses. That's the best description we have. The seismographs picked them up as low-frequency compression waves, originating from the deepest point of the canyon. Magnitude is low, barely registers on the Richter scale, but the pattern is consistent. Fentiman pointed to a laptop showing a seismograph readout. The line was mostly flat, but every 17 seconds there was a spike. Small, regular, like a heartbeat. What's causing it? I asked. The Caltech guy shook his head. We don't know. Could be residual thermal expansion from the meteor. Could be trapped gases venting from fractured bedrock. Could be groundwater interacting with superheated material. We need to get instruments into the canyon to find out. They won't let us, Fentiman said. Militaries locked down the perimeter. No ground entry until they assess the area. Assess for what? She exchanged glances with the Caltech guy. He looked at his laptop. She looked back at me. Rick, I need you to understand something before I show you the next part. What I'm about to tell you is not. It's not being released to the public yet. FEMA's classification is Level 4 Information Control. That means if you talk about this outside this trailer, you're violating federal emergency protocols. Understand? I nodded. I didn't understand. But you don't argue with FEMA classifications. She pulled up a photo on another laptop. Aerial view. Helicopter shot looked like. The image showed dense forest, pine trees, Douglas fir, underbrush, and then nothing. A gash in the earth. The canyon. But it wasn't just a canyon. The edges were wrong. The trees along the rim weren't growing perpendicular to the ground. They were tilted, leaning inward, toward the canyon, like they'd been pulled by some force. This was taken 90 minutes after impact, Fentiman said. She clicked to the next photo. Same location. The timestamp showed 20 minutes later. The trees had moved. Not fallen. Moved. They were leaning farther inward now, tips pointing down into the canyon at maybe 45 degrees. And the ground itself looked different. The soil along the canyon rim had a texture to it, like ripples in water except frozen in place. These are 30-second intervals, Fentiman said. She clicked through 6 more photos. In each one, the trees leaned farther. The ground rippled more. And then, in the last photo, one of the trees was gone. Just gone. Not broken. Not fallen. The space where it had been was empty, and the soil around it had rippled outward like something had pulled the tree down into the earth. What the hell am I looking at? I said. The Caltech guy leaned forward. We think the impact site is generating localized gravitational anomalies, or something functionally similar. The pulses we're detecting correlate with visible terrain deformation. Every 17 seconds, the topography near the canyon rim changes, subtly at first, but it's accelerating. That's not possible, I said. We know, Fentiman said, but it's happening, and it's not just trees. Highway 20 crosses the impact zone about 3 miles from the deepest point. 2 hours ago, that section of highway was intact, damaged from the impact but structurally sound. Now it's... She pulled up another photo. The highway was twisted, not broken, twisted. The asphalt had warped like someone had grabbed it and wrung it out like a towel. The white lane markers spiraled around each other. The guardrails curved in directions guardrails don't curve. I stared at the photo. 16 years doing geotechnical work. I'd seen liquefaction damage. I'd seen slope failures. I'd seen what earthquakes do to infrastructure. This wasn't any of that. We need someone who knows the terrain, Fentiman said. Someone who can predict where the deformation will spread. The Forest Service has evacuation protocols for the wilderness area, but they need to know which routes are still safe. ODOT needs to know if Highway 97 is at risk. FEMA needs to know if Bend is at risk. You're asking me to predict how impossible geology spreads? I'm asking you to use your experience with soil mechanics, slope stability, and seismic activity to make educated guesses about terrain behavior. Yes. I looked at the photos again. The twisted highway, the rippling soil, the trees leaning inward like they were being drawn by something at the bottom of the canyon. I need to see it, I said. I need to see the site. Can't. Military won't allow ground access. Then get me aerial access. Helicopter. I need to see the geology up close, see the rock formations, the soil composition. I can't predict terrain behavior from satellite photos. Fentiman looked at the Caltech guy. He shrugged. She pulled out her phone, dialed a number, walked to the back of the trailer. I heard her say, "This is Deputy Director Fentiman, ODOT Emergency Operations. I need authorization for a survey flight over the impact zone. Civilian contractor with geotechnical expertise. Yes, I'm aware of the flight restrictions. I'm requesting an exception." She listened. I watched the seismograph readout on the laptop. 17 seconds. Spike. 17 seconds. Spike. Like a heartbeat. No, like something breathing. Fentiman came back. "You're cleared for a survey flight. Leaves in 20 minutes. You'll have 30 minutes over the site before they pull you out. Don't touch anything. Don't land. Stay at minimum altitude 500 feet. That's not enough altitude for proper survey work. That's what you get. Take it or leave it." I took it. Because they were paying double rate. Because I knew the terrain. Because somewhere under that canyon, something was pulsing every 17 seconds, and the ground was reshaping itself, and if I didn't help them figure out where it would spread next, a lot of people in Bend, 30,000 people including Diane, were going to be in the path of terrain that didn't follow the rules anymore. The helicopter was a Bell 407, civilian model, Forest Service markings on the side. The pilot was maybe 40, sun-damaged skin, ball cap with a fly fishing logo. He didn't introduce himself, just pointed to the headset and told me to strap in. We lifted off from the football field. I watched the command center shrink below us, the trailers, the trucks, the people who looked like ants moving between equipment. Then we banked north, and the forest filled the windscreen. 500 feet AGL, the pilot said through the headset. That's above ground level. I'm not going lower. I'm not going higher. We make one pass, 30 minutes, then we're out. Fine, I said. You see anything weird, you tell me immediately. And I mean immediately. Last flight crew reported instrument malfunctions over the site. Altimeter went haywire, GPS cut out, compass spun like a top. So if anything feels wrong, we're gone. Understand? I understood. We flew over intact forest for maybe 10 minutes. Dense canopy, pine and fir, some old-growth cedar. I could see dirt roads cutting through, hiking trails, the occasional clear-cut from logging operations back in the 90s. Normal terrain, predictable geology. Then the forest ended. The canyon opened up below us like a wound. I'd seen aerial photos. Didn't matter. The photos didn't capture the scale. The canyon was wrong in every direction. Not just deep, not just long. Wrong. The walls weren't vertical. They curved, spiraled almost, like something had bored through the ground while rotating, carving out a channel that twisted as it went. Jesus Christ, the pilot said. The bottom of the canyon glowed, not like fire, not like lava, like bioluminescence, like deep-sea organisms. Pale blue-green light, pulsing in waves along the canyon floor, moving from the deepest point outward toward the rim. That's the pulse, I said. Every 17 seconds. Watch. We hovered. I counted. 17 seconds. The glow intensified, spread up the canyon walls in ripples, then faded back to the bottom. The ground along the rim shifted. Subtle, maybe an inch, but I saw it. Altimeters jumping, the pilot said. 500 feet. 490. 510. 480. I can't decide where we are. I looked out the window. The trees near the canyon rim were leaning inward, tips pointing down, roots still in the ground. But they weren't dead. I could see green needles on the branches. They were alive, growing sideways. No, growing toward the canyon. Take me lower, I said. Negative. 500 feet minimum. I need to see the geology. I need to see the rock composition, the soil layers. 500 feet minimum. Non-negotiable. I pulled out my phone, started taking photos. The canyon walls showed exposed strata, layers of volcanic basalt, ash deposits, ancient lake sediments from when this area was underwater 10,000 years ago. But the layers were bent, warped, like someone had taken a stack of paper and twisted it while the glue was still wet. The pulse hit again. 17 seconds. The glow intensified. I watched the ground ripple along the southern rim, watched the soil compress and expand like breathing. One of the leaning trees shifted, roots tearing free, and then it didn't fall. It slid, sideways, toward the canyon. Slow, deliberate, like it was being pulled by something at the bottom. The tree hit the canyon wall and it stretched. I'm not talking about it breaking. I'm talking about the trunk elongating, extending like someone pulling taffy. The wood grain separated, fibers spreading apart, but the tree stayed intact. It just stretched, and the stretched section started to glow with that same blue-green light. We need to leave, the pilot said. Wait. My instruments are showing. I don't know what they're showing. Altimeter says we're at 200 feet. GPS says we're over Nevada. Compass is pointing southeast. We need to leave now. I took more photos. The stretched tree was still extending, reaching down into the canyon, and at the bottom, there was something there. Not rock, not meteor debris, something else. Vertical structures, dozens of them, hundreds, rising from the canyon floor like stalagmites. Except they weren't stone. They were organic, bone-white, irregular. Some were thin like poles, some were thick like tree trunks, and they were moving, swaying, not from wind, from the pulse. What the hell are those? I said. The pilot looked. He went pale. I don't know. I don't want to know. We're leaving. He banked the helicopter hard. My stomach lurched. The canyon swung out of view, replaced by intact forest, and we climbed 300 feet, 400, 500. The instruments stabilized. The altimeter settled. The GPS found our location again. We flew back to Sisters in silence. Fentiman met me at the landing pad. What did you see? I showed her the photos on my phone. The stretched tree, the glowing canyon floor, the vertical structures at the bottom. She stared at the last photo, the bone-white poles. What are those? I don't know, I said, but they're organic, and they're moving. Moving how? Swaying, in rhythm with the pulses. She handed my phone back. USGS is saying the pulses are getting stronger. When we first detected them, they were barely registering on the seismographs. Now they're measuring at 2.1 magnitude. In 6 hours, they've doubled in intensity. What happens if they keep getting stronger? We don't know, but the terrain deformation is spreading. 3 hours ago, it was confined to a 2-mile radius around the deepest point. Now it's 4 miles. Trees leaning inward, ground rippling. We've had reports from hiking trails. People saying the paths are moving, shifting, like the soil is flowing downhill except there's no downhill. I thought about the vertical structures at the canyon bottom. Hundreds of them, bone-white, swaying. Where's the meteor? I asked. What? The meteor. 50 tons of rock moving at 30,000 miles per hour. It should still be there, at the bottom of the canyon, A mass that size doesn't vaporize on impact. Even if it shattered, there should be fragments. Tons of fragments. Where are they? Fentiman looked at the Caltech guy. He'd followed us out of the trailer, was standing a few feet away, holding a tablet. "We don't know," he said. "Spectral analysis of the impact site shows trace signatures of extraterrestrial minerals, iridium, osmium, nickel isotopes consistent with chondrite meteorites, but no solid mass. It's like the meteor dissolved." "Rocks don't dissolve," I said. "We know." The three of us stood there. The football field was busier now. More trucks, more personnel. Someone setting up a mobile kitchen near the south end zone. Emergency operations. Long-term deployment. They weren't planning to leave anytime soon. "ODOT needs an assessment," Fentiman said. "We need to know if Highway 97 is at risk. If the deformation keeps spreading at the current rate, it'll reach the highway in," she checked her tablet, "in 14 hours. If the highway becomes unstable, we lose the primary north-south route through Central Oregon. That's supply lines for Bend, Redmond, Prineville, everything east of the Cascades. You want me to predict terrain behavior I don't understand. I want you to use your expertise to give us a probability assessment. Best guess, worst case, anything that helps us make decisions." I looked at the photos on my phone again. The stretched tree, the glowing canyon floor, the bone-white structures. "I need to see the perimeter," I said. "The edge of the deformation zone. I need soil samples. I need to see how the ground is changing at the boundary between stable terrain and affected terrain. Can you get me ground access?" "Military's not allowing." "Can you get me ground access or not?" She pulled out her phone, made another call, walked away, came back 5 minutes later. "You have 2 hours. National Guard escort. You stay outside the 4-mile radius. You don't enter the deformation zone. You take your samples, you leave. Understood?" "Understood. And Rick," she lowered her voice, "if you see anything that looks like it used to be human, you report it immediately. We've had hikers in that area. Wilderness permits show 11 people were on trails within the impact zone when the meteor hit. We haven't found any of them." I thought about the vertical structures at the canyon bottom. Bone white, swaying. "How many people?" I asked. 11 confirmed, but there could be more. Day hikers who didn't file permits. Campers. We don't know. 11 people. 11 vertical structures? More than 11. I counted maybe 200 in the photo, but the photo only showed part of the canyon floor. "I'll report anything I see," I said. She nodded, didn't look convinced. The National Guard escort was the same kid from the checkpoint. M4 rifle, fresh face. He drove a Humvee, took us north on Forest Service Road 14, past the barricades, past the evacuation zone markers, toward the edge of the deformation radius. For miles from the deepest point, that put us somewhere near the Trout Creek drainage. I'd done a survey here in 2018, soil boring for a proposed campground expansion. The ground had been stable, volcanic ash over basalt bedrock. Good drainage, no slope instability, textbook geology. We parked at the trailhead. The kids stayed with the Humvee. I grabbed my field kit, soil auger, sample bags, GPS unit, moisture meter, density gauge. The trail looked normal. Pine duff, exposed roots, rocks embedded in the path from decades of foot traffic. Then I saw the first sign. A tree, Douglas fir, maybe 60 feet tall, growing at a 15-degree angle toward the north, toward the impact site. I checked my compass. North was correct. The tree was leaning toward the canyon, roots still anchored, trunk curved like a bow. I kept walking. 50 feet farther, another tree, 20-degree lean, then another, 30 degrees. The trail itself started to slope, not downhill, sideways, toward the north. My boots slipped on the pine duff because the angle was wrong. Gravity was pulling me north instead of down. I stopped, pulled out the density gauge, measured soil compaction. The numbers didn't make sense. The soil was denser on the north side of the trail than the south side, like it was being compressed by some force I couldn't detect. I took samples, bagged them, marked the GPS coordinates. Then I heard it. A sound, low, resonant, like wind through a narrow canyon, except there was no wind. I followed the sound, 50 feet off the trail, through underbrush to a small clearing. There was something there. A spire, like the ones I'd seen from the helicopter, 15 feet tall, bone white, vertical, rising from the ground like a stalagmite. But this one was different. This one had texture, fabric fused into the surface. A jacket, Columbia logo still visible. Boots at the base where it merged with the soil. Merrill brand. And at the top, a shape that used to be a head. Stretched, elongated. The features smoothed away like melted wax. No eyes, no mouth. Just a smooth dome of bone-white material that caught the light wrong. The pulse hit. 17 seconds. The spire glowed from within. That blue-green bioluminescence spreading through it like veins lighting up. And it swayed. Made that humming sound, the tuning fork vibration that I felt in my bones. This was one of the hikers. This had been a person, 35, maybe 40 years old. Went hiking on a Tuesday morning. Filed a wilderness permit. Told someone they'd be back by Thursday. And the meteor hit. And the deformation caught them. And their body restructured, elongated, transformed into this. Dead. Had to be dead. Nothing human could survive that kind of transformation. The nervous system alone, you can't stretch a human spine 15 feet and have it function. Can't elongate bone and muscle and tissue like that without destroying every organ, every blood vessel, every synapse. Dead on impact, or seconds after. Had to be. I pulled out my phone, took photos, the spire, the jacket, the boots, the smooth, featureless head shape at the top. Evidence, confirmation, one of the 11 missing hikers. I backed away, slowly, one step, two. The spire kept swaying, kept humming, just biological matter now. Organic material restructured by whatever the meteor had done to the geology. Dead tissue that happened to glow and move because of the pulses. Like a corpse twitching from electrical current. Not alive, just reacting. I turned and walked back to the trail. The kid was still at the Humvee when I got there. "We need to leave," I said. "What did you?" "Now, get in the truck." He didn't argue. We drove back to the command center. I didn't talk. Couldn't talk. I kept seeing that spire. The Columbia jacket fused into it. The Merrill boots. The smooth place where a face used to be. Dead. Transformed. One of 11. And there were 200 more down in the canyon. All dead. All transformed. All swaying and humming because the pulses made them move like puppets on strings. The kid didn't ask questions. Just drove. Fast. Highway 97 South, back toward Sisters, back to the football field and the trailers and the people who needed to know what I'd found. Back to Fentanyl. Back to the choice I was going to have to make. Because those people were dead. Already dead. Killed by the initial impact or the transformation process. Nothing left to save. But their bodies, restructured into spires that spread the deformation, that acted as conduits for the pulses, those had to be destroyed. All of them. And I was the only one who could do it. I ran back to the Humvee. The kid was leaning against the hood, scrolling his phone. Looked up when he heard me crashing through the brush. "We need to leave," I said. "Now." "What did you?" Now, get in the truck. He didn't argue. We drove back to the command center. I didn't talk. Couldn't talk. I kept seeing that spire. The jacket fused into bone-white material. The smooth place where a face used to be. Fentiman was in Trailer C when I got back. I showed her the photos. She stared at the screen. The Caltech guy looked over her shoulder. His face went gray. "That's one of the hikers," he said. "Yeah," I said. "Dead. Transformed into that. And there are hundreds more at the bottom of the canyon. The vertical structures we saw from the helicopter. They're all hikers, campers, anyone who was in the impact zone when the meteor hit." Fentiman set my phone down on the table. Her hands were shaking. The transformation, it happened that fast? Had to. The initial impact would have killed them instantly. The energy release alone, anyone within the blast radius would have been vaporized or pulverized. But their organic matter, their bodies, the meteor converted it, restructured it, turned corpses into those spires. The Caltech guy pulled up a new display on his laptop. The pulses, they're not just seismic. I think there's some kind of conversion process. The meteor didn't dissolve. It integrated, merged with the bedrock, the soil, the biological matter. Everything in the impact zone is being restructured at the molecular level. Dead organic material is being repurposed as infrastructure. The spires are acting as conduits, amplifying the pulses, spreading the deformation. "Stop," Fentiman said. "Stop theorizing and tell me what we do. How do we contain this?" "We can't," I said. They both looked at me. "The deformation is spreading. For miles now. It'll be 8 miles by tomorrow, 16 miles by the day after. Exponential growth. And if it reaches populated areas." "Bend is 30 miles from the impact site," Fentiman said. 28. I checked. And the deformation is moving southeast, directly toward the city. She picked up her phone, dialed. "This is Deputy Director Fentiman. I need an immediate conference call with FEMA Region 10, ODOT Emergency Operations, and the Deschutes County Sheriff." "Yes, right now. Tell them we're recommending full evacuation of Bend, Redmond, and all communities within 50 miles of the impact site." She listened. Her face went red. "I don't care what the governor thinks. I don't care about the economic impact. I care about 60,000 people who are about to be in the path of a deformation zone that kills on contact and converts bodies into." She looked at the photo on my phone. "Into that. So get me the conference call or I'm going directly to the press." She hung up, looked at me and the Caltech guy. "They're not going to evacuate," she said. "Cost-benefit analysis. They think we're overreacting. They want more data before they commit to a full evacuation order." "How much data do they need?" I said. "We have photographic evidence of impossible geology. We have 11 missing hikers who are now part of the landscape. They want proof that the deformation will reach Bend. Hard numbers, predictive models, not guesses from a geotechnical contractor and a seismologist." I grabbed the topographic maps from the table, spread them out. "Here, the impact site. Here's the current deformation radius, 4 miles. The terrain between here and Bend is high desert scrubland, volcanic deposits, minimal elevation change. There's nothing to slow the spread. If it's moving at the current rate, 2 miles every 3 hours, it'll reach the Bend city limits in 42 hours. "That's not proof," Fentiman said. "That's extrapolation. That's all I have." The Caltech guy cleared his throat. "There might be another option. If we can disrupt the pulses, stop the conversion process at the source, we might halt the deformation." "How?" Fentiman asked. "The pulses are originating from the deepest point of the canyon, 400 feet down. If we can reach that point, introduce a counteractive force, seismic charges maybe, or… You want to blow it up, I said. I want to disrupt the molecular conversion process before it spreads beyond containment. Yes. Fentiman looked at both of us. Military won't authorize an operation inside the deformation zone. Too dangerous. And we don't have time to mobilize a proper demo team. I can do it, I said. They stared at me. I've worked with seismic charges, controlled explosives for slope stabilization. I know the terrain. I can get into the canyon, plant charges at the deepest point and get out before. You'll die, Fentiman said. Maybe, probably, but if I don't, everyone in Bend dies, including my wife. She's at home, 30 miles from here. She doesn't know what's coming. FEMA won't evacuate, so someone has to stop it. Fentiman closed her eyes, opened them. I can't authorize this. I don't have the authority to send a civilian contractor into a level 5 hazard zone on a suicide mission. Then don't authorize it. I'm going anyway. Rick. Diane doesn't know. She's at home. She thinks this is just an earthquake, some damage to infrastructure, nothing to worry about. She doesn't know the ground is reshaping itself. She doesn't know there are corpses transformed into bone spires spreading the deformation. And if I don't stop this, she's going to be caught in the expansion zone when it reaches our street and the soil starts flowing toward the canyon and our house. Our house that I worked 16 years to pay for gets pulled into a rift that glows like something from the bottom of the ocean. I picked up my field kit. I need explosives. C4 if you have it. Dynamite if you don't. And I need a way into the canyon that doesn't involve hiking for miles through deforming terrain. Fentiman looked at the Caltech guy. He shrugged. She pulled out her phone, made another call. This is Deputy Director Fentiman. I need authorization to access ODOT emergency supplies, specifically seismic demolition equipment. No, I'm not clearing it with FEMA, because FEMA is sitting in Salem running cost-benefit analyses while people are dying. So either give me the authorization or I'm taking the equipment anyway and you can arrest me later. She hung up, looked at me. You have 2 hours. After that, the pulses will be strong enough that the deformation will reach the highway access points. You'll be trapped. I'll be done in 1 hour. You don't know that. I do, because if I'm not done in 1 hour, I'll be dead. And if I'm dead, it doesn't matter. They loaded the Chevy with 40 pounds of C4, detonators, a digital timer, and a satellite phone. The National Guard kid drove me to the access point, Forest Service Road 46, closest approach to the canyon's deepest point, 2 miles from the rim. You really doing this? He asked. Yeah. You got family? Wife, daughter in Portland. They know you're doing this? No. He nodded, didn't say anything else, handed me his M4 rifle. What's this for? I asked. In case you run into anything that used to be human, in case it moves toward you. I took the rifle, checked the magazine, 30 rounds. I'd never fired an M4, shot a deer rifle once in high school, missed the deer. I got out of the Humvee. The kid drove away. I was alone. The terrain here was transitional, some trees leaning, some still vertical. The ground had that rippled texture, like frozen waves, but it wasn't moving yet, not actively. I checked my watch. 3:47 p.m. I had until 4:47, 1 hour. I started walking. The first quarter mile was easy, normal hiking. Then the ground started sloping wrong, not downhill, toward the canyon. I had to lean backward to keep my balance, boots slipping on pine duff that flowed like water toward the north. Half a mile in, I saw the first spire. 20 feet tall, bone white, a jacket fused into the surface, Patagonia logo visible. The stretched form tapered at the top into that smooth dome where a head used to be. No features, just material. The pulse hit. It glowed, swayed, made that humming sound. Dead. Killed instantly by the impact. Body transformed afterward. Nothing human left. I kept walking. More spires. Dozens of them. Some had clothing fused into them, jackets, pants, boots still recognizable. Some were animals. I saw one that had deer legs at the base. The body stretched upward into a thin pole of bone-white material. All of them glowing. All of them humming. All of them dead. I reached the canyon rim at 4:15. 32 minutes. I had 15 minutes to get to the bottom, plant the charges, and get out. The canyon walls were steep, near vertical in places, but they weren't solid. They rippled with each pulse, the rocks softening and hardening in rhythm. I found a section that looked stable, relatively stable, and started down. The walls were warm, not hot, warm like body temperature. The rock had a texture like cartilage, flexible, organic. I descended 50 feet, 100, 200. The glow from the canyon floor intensified with each pulse, blue-green light washing over me in waves. My skin tingled, my bones ached. I could feel the vibration in my teeth. 300 feet. I was halfway down. I looked up. The rim was a narrow line against the sky. The trees leaning inward blocked most of the light. I looked down. The canyon floor was maybe 100 feet below, covered in spires. Hundreds of them, thousands. They rose from the ground like a forest of bone, all swaying in rhythm, all humming that resonant note that made my skull vibrate. All dead, all corpses, all transformed. I kept descending. At 350 feet, I saw the source. The deepest point, a crater within the canyon, maybe 50 feet across. And at the bottom, the meteor, not dissolved, transformed. It had merged with the bedrock, become part of the earth itself. Veins of glowing material spread outward from the central mass like roots, like blood vessels, threading through the soil, connecting to the spires, connecting to the canyon walls, connecting to everything. The meteor wasn't dead. It was growing. I reached the canyon floor at 4:32. 15 minutes left. I unpacked the C4, 40 pounds in 8 blocks. I placed them around the crater, 5 feet from the central mass, evenly spaced. Connected the detonators. Set the timer for 5 minutes. My hands were shaking. The pulses were constant now, not every 17 seconds, but every 10, every 8. The ground rippled under my feet. The spires swayed harder, humming louder. One of them moved. Not swaying. Moved. Its base pulled free from the ground with a wet, tearing sound, and it lurched toward me. It was the spire I'd seen earlier, the one with the Columbia jacket. The smooth dome at the top tilted in my direction like something orienting on prey. Took another step. The base, where boots had been fused, split into root-like tendrils that grabbed at the soil, pulled, propelled the spire forward. Dead. Had to be dead. Just dead tissue animated by the pulses. Like a puppet. No brain. No nerves. No awareness. Just biological matter being controlled by whatever the meteor had become. Took another step. 10 feet away now. The smooth dome at the top split open, cracked down the middle like a mouth, and that humming sound became a shriek. I grabbed the M4, and my hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold the rifle. 5 feet, I fired. 3 rounds, center mass. The rounds punched through the bone-white material. No blood, no reaction, kept moving. I ran. The timer showed 4 minutes 30 seconds. I had to get out of the canyon before the charges blew. Had to get clear of the blast radius. I climbed. The canyon walls rippled under my hands. The rock was soft now, pliable like climbing through wet clay. I pulled myself up 10 feet, 20, 30. Behind me, the spire reached the crater. Its root tendrils stretched down toward the charges, toward the timer. 3 minutes. I climbed faster, 50 feet, 70. My lungs burned. My hands bled from gripping the rippling rock. 100 feet. The pulse hit, stronger than before. The canyon walls convulsed. I lost my grip, slid back down 20 feet, caught myself on an outcropping of solidified rock. 2 minutes. I looked down. The spire was pulling at the charges. Its tendrils wrapped around one of the C4 blocks, lifted it, began unwinding the detonator. Dead tissue, animated tissue, but still following some directive from the meteor: protect the source, stop the threat. 1 minute 30 seconds. I pulled the satellite phone from my pocket, dialed Fentiman. "Rick," she answered. "Are you out?" "No, the charges are set." 1 minute 20 seconds. The spires, they're mobile, moving. One of them is trying to disarm the explosives. "You're still in the canyon?" "Yeah." Silence. Then, "Rick, if you detonate now, you won't make it out." "I know." "Rick." "Tell Diane." I stopped. "What do you say? Tell her I loved her?" She knew that. "Tell her I'm sorry?" "For what?" "For doing the only thing that might save her life." "Tell Diane the timing belt finally gave out," I said. "She'll understand." I hung up, hit the detonation switch on the timer override. The charges blew. The blast wave hit me like a physical thing, threw me against the canyon wall. The rock collapsed around me. The glow intensified, turned white, turned blinding. The hum became a roar, became a shriek, became silence. I fell. The world went black. I woke up on the canyon rim. Don't know how long I was out. The sun was lower, maybe an hour, maybe 2. My body felt wrong, heavy, sore. I looked at my hands. They were normal. Skin, bones, fingernails. No transformation, no elongation. I stood up. My legs worked. I was intact. The canyon was different. The glow was gone. The spires were collapsing, falling back to the ground like trees cut at the base. The hum had stopped. The pulses had stopped. I'd done it. The deformation was halted. I sat there for a while, on the rim, looking down into the canyon. The blue-green glow was gone completely now. Just darkness down there, and rubble. 300 feet of collapsed rock where the spires had been. Where the bodies had been. Dead when they hit. Dead when they transformed. Still dead when I brought the canyon down on top of them. But I destroyed their remains. Buried them under tons of rock. Made their corpses part of the rubble. My ears were ringing. The explosion had been, I don't know, louder than anything I'd experienced. Louder than thunder. Louder than the compressor at full power. The kind of loud that doesn't register as sound, just as physical pressure that ruptures something inside your head. I touched my ear. My fingers came away wet. Blood. Both ears bleeding. My clothes were shredded. The shirt torn across the back. Pants ripped at the knees. The Red Wings, one was missing the sole, peeled off by the blast or the fall or whatever had happened when the canyon walls collapsed around me. I should be dead. I'd been 300 feet down when I hit the detonator. The blast should have killed me instantly. Even if it didn't, the falling rock should have buried me, crushed me. But I was here, on the rim, alive. I tried to stand. My legs almost gave out. Sat back down. My body felt hollow, like something had been scooped out of me and the shell was all that remained. The satellite phone was still in my pocket. Cracked screen, but it powered on. I dialed Fentiman. "Rick." Her voice was distant, tinny through the damaged speaker. "Rick, are you alive?" "Yeah." "Jesus Christ. We saw the explosion from here. The whole sky lit up. We thought, where are you?" "Canyon Rim. I'm okay." "Stay there. We're sending a helicopter. Don't move. Don't try to walk out." "Okay." I hung up. I sat there and watched the sun set over the Cascades. The sky turned orange, then red, then purple. The stars came out. The temperature dropped. I didn't feel cold. Didn't feel anything. The helicopter came maybe an hour later. Spotlight sweeping across the forest. Found me sitting on the rim, legs dangling over the edge, looking down into the darkness where the canyon floor used to glow. They pulled me up, put me on a stretcher. I told them I could walk. They said no. Protocol. Possible internal injuries. Blast trauma. Concussion. They flew me to Sisters. Landed at the high school. Paramedics waiting. They checked my vitals, shined lights in my eyes, asked me questions I answered on autopilot. Name, date, location. Who's the president? They wanted to take me to the hospital in Bend. I said no. I'm fine. I need to go home. Fentanyl was there. Told the paramedics she'd handle it. They didn't look happy, but they let me go. She drove me to where I'd left the Chevy. Forest Service Road 46. The truck was still there. Keys in the ignition. "You saved Bend," she said. 60,000 people. You saved them." I nodded. The pulses stopped. The deformation, it's not spreading anymore. You did it. "What about the people?" I asked. "The hikers in the canyon?" She looked away. "They were already dead. Killed instantly by the impact. What you saw, the spires, those were just their remains. Biological matter converted by the meteor. You didn't kill them, Rick. They died when the meteor hit. You destroyed the converted tissue before it could spread the deformation further." "Yeah." She handed me an envelope. "Payment. Double rate 16 hours plus hazard pay. It's all there." I took it. Didn't open it. "Go home, Rick," she said. "Go home to your wife." She walked back to her ODOT van, drove away, left me standing there in the dark next to my truck with its missing sole on one boot and blood dried in my ears and an envelope full of money. I got in the Chevy. The engine started on the first try. That tick-tick-tick sound was still there. Still the heat shield or the manifold or whatever. I drove to Bend. Highway 97 was open. Traffic was light. The streetlights were on. Everything looked normal. People didn't know. Didn't know how close they'd come. Didn't know what I'd done to save them. I pulled into the driveway at 9:47 p.m. Sat in the truck for, 10 minutes. 20. The porch light was on. I could see Diane through the kitchen window, moving around, making dinner. Normal, routine, safe. Because of what I'd done. I got out of the truck. My legs held this time. I walked to the front door, opened it. The dog barked. Diane called from the kitchen. "You're late. How was the job?" I stood in the doorway, looked at her, at our house, at the life I'd saved. "Long," I said. 3 months later, I still dream about the hum. Not every night, most nights, that resonant frequency, just below hearing range, vibrating through my bones. I wake up at 3 a.m. and I can feel it in my teeth. Diane doesn't hear it. She sleeps fine. She doesn't know. The Chevy's timing belt broke 2 weeks after the impact. Actual timing belt this time. $800 at the dealership, just like they said. I paid cash. Used the ODOT check. Still had $5,000 left over after the repairs, the mortgage, the dog food. Paid off Diane's student loans. She asked where the money came from. I told her ODOT job, emergency work, double rate. She didn't ask for details. She was happy. One less bill. One less thing to worry about. I didn't tell her I'd been inside a canyon that glowed like bioluminescence. Didn't tell her about the spires. Didn't tell her I'd pushed a detonation switch while standing 300 feet down in a rift that was reshaping reality at the molecular level. What would be the point? The Oregon Rift Valley is still there. FEMA sealed it. Military perimeter. No entry. Officially, it's classified as a geological hazard zone pending long-term stability assessment. Unofficially, I don't know what it is officially. The news ran stories for a week. Meteor impact, seismic damage, 11 confirmed fatalities from the initial strike. After that, nothing. The story disappeared. Trevor called me last month. Asked if I wanted to bid on a new ODOT project, bridge foundation work near government camp. I told him no. He didn't push. He knows something happened at the impact site. He knows I came back different, but he doesn't ask. Nobody asks. I still do site surveys, soil borings, seismic assessments. Same work I've done for 16 years. But now when I drill into the ground, when I pull up core samples and analyze the strata, I think about what's underneath. Not bedrock, not stable geology. Something else, something waiting. The deformation stopped. Fentiman was right about that. The existing affected areas stabilized. The 4-mile radius around the impact site remains warped. Trees still lean inward. The ground still has that rippled texture. The canyon walls still show impossible curvature, but it's not spreading anymore. It's frozen, locked in place. Except I don't think it's frozen. I think it's dormant. 2 months after the impact, I drove back to Sisters. Not for work, just to see. I parked at the barricade on Forest Service Road 46, same place the National Guard kid dropped me off, and I hiked to the perimeter. Not into the deformation zone, just to the edge. The trees were still leaning. 45 degrees now, maybe 50. Steeper than before. The ground still sloped wrong. And when I put my hand on the soil, I felt a vibration. Faint, almost imperceptible. But there, like a pulse. Slower than before. Not every 17 seconds. Every 30. Every 40, but still there, still active. I reported it to Fentiman, called her office, left a message. She called back 3 days later, said USGS was monitoring the site, said the seismographs picked up occasional low-frequency signals but nothing indicating active deformation, said I shouldn't worry. I worry, because I stood at the bottom of that canyon and I saw what the meteor became. Not a rock, not debris, a network, roots spreading through the bedrock, connecting to everything, converting organic matter into structures that serve some purpose I don't understand. And I collapsed it with 40 pounds of C4. But I didn't destroy it. Explosives don't destroy something at the molecular level. They break it apart, scatter it, disrupt the structure, but the material is still there. The roots are still there, broken, dormant, but there. What happens when they reconnect? What happens when the pulse starts again? Diane doesn't know any of this. She's happy. The student loans are paid off. We're talking about taking a vacation next summer. Maybe the coast. Maybe Cannon Beach. She wants to rent one of those cabins on the cliff, the ones that overlook the ocean. I tell her that sounds good. I don't tell her I can't sleep without hearing that hum. I don't tell her I drive past the barricade every 2 weeks to check if the trees are leaning farther. I don't tell her about the spires, about the corpses transformed into bone-white monuments that swayed and hummed and moved on root tendrils like puppets controlled by something alien. I don't tell her I collapsed the canyon on top of them. Buried 11 people, confirmed maybe more, under tons of rock. They were already dead, killed instantly by the impact. The transformation happened to corpses, not living people. That's what Fentiman said. That's what the Caltech guy confirmed. dead on impact. No survivors in the blast zone. But their bodies didn't stay buried. That's what keeps me up at 3 a.m. Because dead tissue doesn't move on its own, doesn't walk toward threats on root tendrils, doesn't try to disarm explosives. The meteor was controlling them, animating them, using dead tissue as tools, as infrastructure, as extensions of itself. And if the meteor is still there, dormant but not destroyed, what's it doing with the tissue I buried under 300 feet of rubble? Is it reconnecting, rebuilding, spreading through the collapsed rock, threading through the debris, converting the stone itself into more of whatever it needs? I drive past the barricade every 2 weeks. The trees lean farther each time. 50 degrees, 55, 60. The ground slopes steeper toward the north. And that vibration, that pulse I feel when I put my hand on the soil, it's getting stronger. Not much, not fast, but stronger. I measure it, not officially, not with USGS equipment, just with my own tools, density gauge, seismometer I bought off eBay for $300, not calibrated, not professional grade, but good enough to detect changes. The pulses are increasing in frequency. Every 40 seconds 2 months ago, every 35 seconds last month, every 30 seconds now. Getting faster, getting stronger, coming back. And nobody else is watching. USGS monitors from a distance. FEMA says the site is stable. The military maintains the perimeter, but they don't go in. Nobody goes in. Just me, every 2 weeks, checking the trees, feeling the pulse, watching the deformation creep outward inch by inch. Because if it starts spreading again, if the trees lean all the way horizontal, if the pulses get fast enough to start moving the ground in real time, Bend is still 28 miles away. And Diane is still there. So I watch. I measure. I wait. And I think about what I'll need to do if it starts again. Not C4. That didn't work. That only delayed it. Broke the structure but didn't eliminate the source. Next time I'll need something permanent. Something that destroys at the molecular level. Thermobaric explosives maybe. Or nuclear. Small-yield tactical warhead. Something that doesn't just break the meteor apart but vaporizes it. Turns it into plasma. Eliminates every atom of extraterrestrial material. But you can't just requisition a nuclear warhead. You can't just walk into FEMA and say the dormant meteor is waking up and I need to vaporize it before it spreads to Bend. So I wait. I do my site surveys. I drill my soil borings. I analyze foundation stability for bridges and buildings that will probably be standing when the deformation starts again. I pay my mortgage. I buy dog food at Costco. I tell Diane about my day and I don't mention the hum or the dreams or the way my hands shake when I hold the soil auger and think about what's underneath. I live with it. And I check the trees every 2 weeks. 60 degrees now. 65. Steeper. Leaning farther. Toward the canyon. Toward the source. The spire with the Columbia jacket, its remains are still down there, buried under 300 feet of collapsed rock. The smooth dome where a head used to be, the root tendrils that grabbed at the explosives. Dead tissue, animated by the meteor, controlled like a puppet. But tissue degrades, decomposes. 3 months under tons of rock in a sealed canyon. There shouldn't be anything left, just bones. Maybe not even that. Unless the meteor preserved it. Unless the conversion process stopped the decomposition. Unless the organic matter down there is still intact, still connected to the network, still waiting for the pulses to get strong enough to animate it again. I don't know. I'll never know. Because the canyon is sealed. No entry. Classified. Forbidden. And I did that. I sealed it. I buried them. I collapsed 300 feet of rock on top of tissue that might still be functional, might still be connected, might still be part of whatever the meteor is trying to build. And if I'm wrong, if the deformation starts spreading again, if the trees lean all the way horizontal, if the pulses get strong enough to start moving corpses through solid rock, I'll have to go back. Back into the canyon. Back to the source. Back to finish what I started. Even if it kills me. Because that's the choice I made 3 months ago when I stood at the bottom of a glowing canyon and pushed a detonation switch. And I live with that choice every day. Every night. Every time I hear that hum at 3 a.m. and Diane sleeps beside me, safe, unaware, happy. Every time I drive past the barricade and see the trees leaning farther. Every time I put my hand on the soil and feel that pulse getting stronger. 30 seconds between pulses now. 29. 28. Getting faster. Coming back. And when it does, when the deformation starts spreading again, when the pulses get strong enough to move the ground in real time, when the converted tissue under 300 feet of rubble starts pushing through the rock, I'll be ready. I'll go back. I'll find a way to end it permanently. Even if it kills me. Because Diane is 28 miles from the impact site. And I won't let her become one of those spires. I won't let her body be converted into bone-white material that glows and sways and serves as infrastructure for something alien. I won't let her die and be repurposed. So I watch the trees. I feel the pulse. I wait. And I prepare for the day I'll have to go back down into that canyon and finish what I started. Because it's not over. It's dormant. And dormant things wake up.